Here are 5 stories from the My Master series. Each one is fascinating in its own way. Since there are many stories in the Master series, I plan to compile them into a playlist. I will update it irregularly, so please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. Now, without further ado, enjoy. Kojoik Tunnel. There were often times when my master could see things that I couldn't. Early one summer, my occult master took me on a late-night drive to Kojoik Tunnel. Kojoik Tunnel, located in the neighboring city of K, is a famous haunted spot, one of the top 5 in the area. For some reason, K City has an unusually high number of haunted spots. As we drove, my master explained the highlights. Kojoik Tunnel is seriously haunted. The phone booth in front of it is creepy too, but inside the tunnel, they come in. I'd heard rumors about things coming in. Especially when there are 3 people in the car. If you leave one seat open, they'll sit there. I had a terrible feeling. There was a stuffed animal sitting in the passenger seat next to my master. I was resigned to sitting alone in the back seat. You're planning to bring something in, I thought. As the tunnel came into view, I couldn't see anything at the phone booth, but the atmosphere inside the tunnel was definitely different. It was darker than I expected, and I kept looking around nervously. After only a short distance, I was sure something would appear. I had a ringing in my ears. I couldn't decide whether to sit on the right or the left side, so I fidgeted in the middle. Was it going to come from the right, from the opposite lane, or from the left, near the wall? My heart was pounding when suddenly, my master shouted, "I'll kill you, damn it!" I shrank back, thinking he was talking to me. "Lower your head, don't let it touch you." The ringing in my ears was intense. But I still couldn't see anything. Panicking, I lowered my head, but the thought of an invisible hand passing through me was terrifying. "Don't run away. If you run, I'll kill you again." I'd seen my master shout threats before, but never this fiercely. "Hey, don't let it escape, take the picture quickly." I had the camera for taking spirit photos, but which way? "Hurry, the right window." "I can't see anything." "The taxi hat." "You should see it." "Don't let it escape, damn it." "I'll kill you." "I can't see anything." My master clicked his tongue in frustration and faced forward again. He was going to break. I was scared out of my wits and just kept pressing the shutter randomly. When we finally exited the tunnel, I felt like I was barely alive. Later, when I saw the developed photos, they showed the window and the tunnel wall lamps outside. My master, looking displeased, said it was the right window from my perspective. Looking closely, I could see a faint reflection of an elderly man's frightened face wearing a taxi hat behind my shoulder in the window where I had held the camera. Deformities. I have an occult master who often lectures me on his understanding of spirits, frequently saying things like, "Spirits are like this." According to my master, most spirits don't realize they are dead. Some stay at the site of their accident still seeking help, while others try to continue their daily routines from when they were alive. These spirits fear the same things that would scare normal humans, gangsters, vicious dogs, and madmen. Sometimes, just shouting at them can terrify them. The real problem is with those spirits that aren't scared by threats. It's best to avoid spirits that understand they are dead. He often said things like that, which made sense and were common stories. However, once he told me something I've never heard from anyone else, and to this day, I've never heard a similar story. It might be due to my ignorance, but I wonder what people in this thread think about it. During the summer of my second year of university, I saw some unusual things in quick succession. The first time was at a pachinko parlor I visited for the first time. I was wandering around the pachinko section when I stopped in front of a man sitting at one of the machines. His lower lip was incredibly swollen, hanging down almost to his chest. I thought it was some kind of disease and walked away, but the next day, I was on the bus heading to town, sitting and staring ahead when I noticed the person in the seat in front of me had an extra finger. There were 6 fingers on the hand resting on the armrest. There was a thumb on the left end and another large finger on the opposite end. It might have been polydactyly. The person got off the bus before me, but no one else seemed to notice. I later realized how unobservant I had been. The next day, I saw a dwarf. This was also at a pachinko parlor. I thought a child was running around, but when I saw the face, it was that of a middle-aged person. The voice was high-pitched, and they were saying something like, "It's not hitting." Their legs were bent, making them quite short, not even reaching my chest. I didn't stare much this time, but seeing so many unusual things in quick succession made me feel strange. When I told my master about this, I expected him to be pleased. Instead, he looked serious. My master loved to scare me with irresponsible remarks like, "You're cursed," but this time he took a moment to think before speaking. Sometimes when you see something once, you start noticing it more often. It's a matter of probability. But there's something strange about your story. The front seats on the bus have a window on the right side, don't they? I nodded, wondering what he was getting at. That means the seat in front of you is the same. Now, was the hand you saw on the armrest a right hand or a left hand? I shook my head, not understanding. Some buses have armrests by the window, but given that you saw it clearly and no one else noticed, that armrest was probably on the aisle side. Which means the thumb shouldn't have been on the left side. It hit me. The hand you saw should have been a left hand, but it looked like a right hand with 6 fingers. That's odd. I started to sweat. In the other stories, you mentioned the person's appearance, but you didn't in the bus story. You must have seen them get off the bus, but your memory of it is unclear. You're subconsciously trying to make it seem like just a deformity. My master raised his hands. All right, put out your dominant hand. You're right-handed, right? Place your left hand over your right, with the palms down, so that the fingers overlap except for the thumbs. The left hand should be slightly lower. This way, you have 6 fingers. Try it yourself. The thumbs on both sides make it symmetrical. How does it feel? It felt strange but comforting, more so than clasping hands normally. Moving the hands together felt especially right. This is the shape humans subconsciously want their hands to be. I've seen ghosts with 2 thumbs a few times. So that was a ghost that only I could see? Probably. Some spirits wander around in their original form, while others transform unconsciously to stabilize themselves. They might have 2 dominant hands or 6 symmetrical fingers. My master said this and then playfully grabbed me with his 6-fingered hand. It was a strange story. I've never heard anything like it in any ghost story books. I don't know if it was my master's exaggeration or some unknown truth. For now, I have no way of knowing. Aruku-san. My esteemed senior's girlfriend was a strange person. My senior, who was my occult mentor, once said, "She's even more incredible than I am." Let's call her Aruku-san. I remember she was in the literature department, though I can't recall her specific major. In the early days of university, I found myself alone with her in the club room. She was beautiful but lacked expression, making it hard to read her thoughts, and I distinctly disliked her. While she was typing on her laptop, she suddenly looked up and said something strange. "The letters, they come into my mouth." "Huh?" I replied, confused. "Sometimes at night when I'm writing, the letters I write float up and enter my mouth." "Uh-huh," I muttered. "What is she talking about? Do you understand? It doesn't stop. There are more letters than I wrote. They keep entering my mouth, and I can't close it. It's the scariest thing for me," she said with a serious face. At that time, we didn't use the term electric wave to describe people with bizarre claims, but she definitely fit that description. However, she wasn't just some crazy person. She was incredibly sharp, and I often saw my mentor outwitted by her. Aruku-san had sharp intuition, predicting bus delays and even prompting us to change the TV channel right before Matsui hit a home run. Once, I casually asked my mentor, "What's with Aruku-san?" He replied, "Do you know Edgar Cayce?" "Of course, he's the guy who made predictions through dreams or while in a trance, right?" "That's it." "I think Aruku is similar." "What do you mean?" "I wish I could show you her sleeping." "It's terrifying," he said, dodging the question. I'm not an expert on Edgar Cayce, but unlike him, who had a traumatic experience, Aruku probably has a congenital condition. So she sees predictive dreams? I don't know. I'm not sure if she's awake or not. Sometimes she gets things right, and sometimes she's wrong. It might be similar to your pseudo-experiences during sleep paralysis. I often experienced sleep paralysis, where I thought I had woken up, only to find myself still in bed. Sometimes these episodes lasted for an extended period, even a whole day, before I would snap back. I had kept a sleep paralysis journal in high school, which my mentor had been very interested in and persistently asked for until I gave it to him. Looking back, he might have wanted it to understand Aruku-san's condition. "Are you monopolizing Aruku-san?" I asked. He grinned and pulled out a floppy disk, waving it at me. The timing was too perfect, so it was probably a bluff, but he definitely kept a file on Aruku-san. What unsettled me more was when Aruku-san, before graduating, told me, "Beware of floods." I had forgotten about it, but now, after failing to secure a job, I'm back in my rural hometown, which is at high risk of flooding if a major earthquake hits. Recent estimates predict up to 30,000 deaths in our prefecture from the next Nankai earthquake. Please spare me. I'm seriously scared. How many years do we have left? Whimper. The jar. This is the most terrifying story I've ever experienced. It happened in the fall of my first year at university. My occult mentor had fallen into a slump. He seemed uninterested and his intuition was off. When I asked, "Can you take me to a haunted spot?" he would be lost in thought. Sometimes he would pull 4 1-yen coins from his pocket, shake them on the back of his hand, and mutter, "No, it's not a good day," before lying down again. One day, he suddenly grabbed my hand and said, "Show me your palm." After examining it, he said, "This is bad. Too bad for me to understand. It bothers you, doesn't it? Doesn't it?" He spoke as if he knew everything. "Let's go," he insisted. I was happy that he was finally motivated, even if it was forced. He didn't tell me where we were going, but I followed him onto a train. We arrived at the main city of the neighboring prefecture. We exited the station and walked through the arcade shopping street. There was an old man sitting in the shopping district with a handwritten sign saying palm reading on a stand. My mentor greeted him warmly, saying he was a relative. The palm reader, who introduced himself as Soho, seemed displeased when he realized we were there to see something. Soho was well known locally and claimed to be a part of Asano Hachiro's lineage. I didn't fully understand, but I had my palm read. Aside from being warned about trouble with women, there was nothing particularly bad. He mentioned a strong Venus ring between my index and middle fingers, which supposedly indicated artistic talent, which made me happy. When I asked if my mentor was getting his palm read, Soho glared at him and said, "I don't need to. I can see the death mark." My mentor just laughed. We waited until Soho closed his stall for the night, then he took us to his home, a large traditional Japanese house. The palm reading was just a hobby, it seemed. After dinner, he invited us to stay the night, and I took a bath. When I came out, my mentor told me to follow him. We headed to the storehouse at the back of the property, where Soho was waiting. "You have the right to see it, but I'm not thrilled," Soho said. My mentor brushed it off and entered the storehouse. There was a ladder leading down from the back of the storehouse. We descended it, my mentor looking more excited than I'd ever seen him. I knew we'd encounter something dangerous. We descended to what felt like the basement of a two-story building, where we found a tatami mat room. There was a yellow lamp hanging from the ceiling. The room was about 6 tatami mats in size, with earthen walls and tatami mats laid directly on the dirt floor. It had originally been a family air raid shelter, I later learned. In the corner of the room was a strange object, a giant jar. It stood about chest high and was too wide to wrap my arms around. It wasn't the usual porcelain or pottery, but a rough, rope-patterned earthenware jar. "Isn't this a Jomon period pot?" I asked. Soho shook his head. "No, it's from the Yayoi period. It's a container for storing grain." Why was such a thing here? I wondered. My mentor approached the jar and studied it closely. "This was taken by my grandfather during the chaos of the war," Soho explained. He named a well-known archaeological site. My mentor then spoke. "Grain storage, huh," he said, almost laughing. Despite the yellow light, the jar had a dull, lifeless color. My grandfather claimed it was used to store human bones. He said you could see the faces of the dead when you looked inside, Soho said. I shivered. It was still early autumn, but I felt a chill. They say the dead climb out of the jar. The dead fill the room, the storehouse, and when you lock it from the outside, their cries echo through the town, Soho continued. I felt like I'd been hit over the head. My mind spun, filled with a buzzing sound. A sour smell began to fill the air. This jar was bad news. Despite many paranormal experiences, this was the worst I had ever felt. My mentor peered into the jar's mouth. They're coming. Climb up. Climb up, he said, his eyes shining brightly. The buzzing sound in my ears was overwhelming, like a swarm of flies. With a snap, the light went out. I saw a pale blue glow rising from the jar just before it went dark. We need to get out, Soho said urgently. Look at this. These guys have been in here for 2,000 years. Climb up. Climb up, my mentor shouted. His eyes were glowing as he looked into the jar. The buzzing was deafening. We need to get out now, Soho insisted, pulling my mentor away. They were cannibals. This is our original sin. Humans are unworthy of life, my mentor screamed. I was paralyzed with fear. Come here and look. Look into the darkness. There's no salvation in the afterlife. This is our curse, my mentor yelled. I scrambled up the ladder and ran. Soho dragged my mentor out and locked the storehouse. He told us to sleep and leave the next day. That night, a strong wind howled, and I covered my ears, trying to sleep. After that incident, my mentor regained his energy, but I felt conflicted. The Seance Experiment. Around the Golden Week holiday of my freshman year at university, I started frequenting an online forum. It was a place where local occult enthusiasts gathered, and it was quite lively, even in the middle of the night. One day, amid the rainy season, a plan to conduct a seance experiment came up. The regular members had done it several times before and had even met offline. I was getting more and more into the occult, so I desperately wanted to join them. I eagerly expressed my interest, saying, "Count me in. I'm always free and super bored." Eventually, they agreed to let me join. A woman named Coco, who claimed to be a medium, was organizing the seance. She often gathered people for such offline seances. The date was set, but only a few people could make it. Coco, Mikachi, Kayasuk, me. Although the group was small, all three were regulars on the forum, so they thought it would be fine. I had no objections, but I was eager to bring along someone else, my senior and mentor in the occult. He wasn't a medium but a seer, someone who could see spirits. I admired his abilities and wanted to show him off to the others. However, when I tried to persuade him to join, he refused firmly. "It's a hassle. Ridiculous. I can't babysit," he said. I tried to explain the details, and when I mentioned Coco's name, his demeanor changed. "Don't go," he said. Surprised, I asked why. "You'll have a frightening experience," he said, implying he knew her. "But we wanted a fright, didn't we?" "Well, I'm not going. If you want to go, do it, but I won't be responsible for what happens." He didn't tell me anything more, but his disapproval made the event even more intriguing. We met at a family restaurant in the city on the appointed day. While having dinner, we had a lively discussion about the occult. When the time was right, we moved to Coco's apartment. Coco was a beautiful woman but had a flat, emotionless way of speaking that gave me an eerie impression. Mikachi was talkative, and Coco occasionally nodded along. To my surprise, both women were my seniors at university. "Kayasuk has work, so he'll come directly to my place later," Coco said. I wondered if they were dating. Around 11 p.m., we headed to the apartment in Mikachi's car. Kayasuk called to say he'd be even later, so we decided to start without him. I was both nervous and excited. Coco had completely blacked out one room in her apartment, ensuring no light could enter. I had played with Ouija boards before, but this was my first real seance. A seance involves summoning spirits into a human body. As we entered the pitch-black room, a candle was lit. "Let's begin," Coco said, her expression void of any emotion. "Since we have a newcomer today, let me explain, no matter what happens, do not panic. Stay calm. A disturbed mind always leads to bad outcomes," Coco said calmly. Mikachi remained silent. Trying to hide my nervousness, I joked, "Don't we need to open a window?" Coco glared at me with a mask-like face and whispered, "Windows are not barriers to spirits. They can pass through. But I will be the cage for the spirit. Hopefully, I can contain it, but if not..." She trailed off, leaving me uneasy. My heart raced, but there was no turning back now. The seance began. I closed my eyes as instructed. The candlelight glowed red through my eyelids. Coco's voice came from somewhere. "This is your room. You see the familiar ceiling, the view outside the window. Now get up. Stretch and stand. Your perspective rises. Look around. You see a door. You're about to leave the room." This sounded like a psychological game where you mentally walk through your house. And if Coco's words from earlier flashed in my mind. Normally, the medium channels the spirit and we ask questions. But in my method, you'll meet the spirit directly. I understood the situation. Terror peaked, but this was a rare opportunity. Calm down, heart. Calm down, heart. I immersed myself in the mental image. There was a strange noise, and Coco's body shuddered. "Hold hands. Form a circle," she said. We groped for each other's hands in the dark. The candle flickered out, plunging us into complete darkness. You leave the room. Is it the hallway? The kitchen? Familiar scenes. You look around carefully. Look for anything unusual. In my mind, I was not in my dorm but my room at home. Everything was vividly real. I walked down the hallway and opened my parents' bedroom door. Light streamed through the window, reflecting off the tatami mats, making me squint. I began descending the stairs, feeling the creak and the banister. To my left was a sliding door to the guest room, always dark even in the daytime. As a child, I feared this room. Walk and look. Look for anything unusual, Coco's voice faintly instructed. I turned on the guest room light. A severed hand lay in the middle of the tatami. I gasped. A human right hand. Blood dripped from the cut, darkening the tatami. I had to get out of this room. I turned and bolted out. I rushed through the hallway into the living room. A severed foot lay on the dining table. I recoiled. This was bad. This spirit was dangerous. I had to stop. I tried to open my eyes. They wouldn't open. I screamed, "Let me out." But my voice echoed in the empty living room. I ran to the back door, finding my shoes. No time to put them on, I twisted the knob. The door wouldn't budge. "Let me out." I pounded on the door. Faint voices reached me, but I couldn't understand them. I ran to the front door, tripping over something. Pain. Real pain. Looking closer, I saw it was a torso without limbs. The mail slot on the front door clicked open. Something tried to crawl through. I felt I would die here. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. The door clicked open, and a cheerful voice called out, "Hey. You guys started?" I opened my eyes. Darkness. But this was definitely Coco's apartment. "Over here," a voice called. The room door opened, and bright fluorescent light streamed in. I saw Coco and Mikachi's faces. "Sorry for interrupting." "My bad," the newcomer said. I was saved. My hands trembled with relief. The person in the doorway, backlit by the light, looked like a goddess. "Sorry to disturb you," Coco muttered. I quickly let go of her hand, drenched in sweat. The next day, I eagerly recounted the experience to my mentor. He laughed. "You fell for it." "What do you mean?" I pouted. "It was hypnosis." "What?" "That psychological game doesn't usually involve such detailed narration. It's just about looking for differences." I was skeptical, but he insisted. I asked them to do it. "You've been getting cocky, so I wanted to scare you a bit." So you knew them? Yeah, Coco is my girlfriend. The next day at the club room, Coco and my mentor were there. Sorry about the other day. I went too far, Coco apologized. My mentor grinned. She's a ghost to you, but we're in the same club, he said. Coco looked pale even in the daylight. Don't deceive people with this medium nonsense. I didn't teach you hypnosis for that, he chided. Coco nonchalantly replied, sure, then turned to me. I'm Ayumu Yoshino. Nice to meet you, Junior. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling about her after that. Later, my mentor said something troubling. It's strange you saw those body parts. When asked to look for differences, you saw them. Is that your image of a ghost? Of course not, I replied. Then you might see them for real someday. What do you mean? You'll understand eventually, he said with a mysterious smile.